I am Emma, 32 years old and a financial advisor in Boston. For 6 years, I saved every extra penny for my dream of owning property. When I finally bought a duplex last spring, I decided to keep it quiet from my family. That decision turned out to be wiser than I knew. One Sunday dinner, I overheard my parents planning for my brother Benjamin and his entire family to move into my new place rent-free without even asking me. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, take a second to let me know where you are watching from and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when family takes advantage. Growing up in my family, there was always an unspoken rule that I was expected to help others, especially family. My parents, Ella and Patrick, raised us with the value that family comes first. But somehow, that burden seemed to fall more heavily on my shoulders than on my older brother, Benjamin. I love my family deeply, but over the years, a pattern developed that I was only beginning to recognize. Benjamin, now 36, had always been the charming one, quick with jokes and stories. He was also notoriously bad with money. By 25, he had racked up credit card debt, buying a motorcycle, and taking expensive vacations. By 30, he had borrowed money from our parents for a business venture that failed within 6 months. Each time, the family rallied around him, offering financial support and emotional comfort. I was always expected to contribute, either by lending money I had carefully saved or by offering free childcare for his 3 kids. His current situation was particularly dire. 8 months ago, Benjamin lost his job at a marketing firm after the company downsized. His wife, Jaya, a part-time teacher, was not making enough to cover their expenses. They had 3 children, Evren, age 10, Lunaria, age 8, and Silas, age 5. Their landlord had recently increased their rent, and they were struggling to make ends meet. Meanwhile, I had been working diligently toward financial independence. After completing my MBA 7 years ago, I secured a position as a financial advisor at a reputable firm in Boston. The irony was not lost on me that I helped others manage their money, while my own brother seemed incapable of doing the same. I lived frugally in a small one-bedroom apartment, brought lunch to work every day, and limited unnecessary expenses. Every month, I put aside 30% of my income toward my goal of property ownership. When I reached my savings goal earlier this year, I began researching real estate investments. A duplex seemed the perfect option. I could live in one unit and rent out the other to help cover the mortgage. After months of searching, I found a charming brick duplex in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown. It needed some cosmetic updates, but was structurally sound, and the price was within my budget. I worked with a real estate agent who helped me navigate the purchasing process. The closing date was set, and as the day approached, I felt a growing excitement mixed with anxiety. This was by far the largest purchase of my life, and I was doing it alone. I decided not to tell my family until after everything was finalized, partly because I wanted to surprise them, but also because I feared they might find a way to make this milestone about Benjamin and his needs. The following Sunday, I drove to my parents' suburban home for our regular family dinner, excited to finally share my news. I had decided this was the perfect time to announce my property purchase. I imagined my parents' proud faces and perhaps a touch of surprise that their daughter had accomplished this milestone on her own. I had even prepared a small speech and brought a bottle of champagne to celebrate. I arrived early to help my mother with dinner preparations, as was our custom. The aroma of pot roast filled the house, and my father was watching a baseball game in the living room. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when I heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of my brother Benjamin, his wife Jaya, and their 3 children entering. My mother wiped her hands on her apron and went to greet them, leaving me alone in the kitchen.
I continued preparing the salad, half listening to the greetings and chatter coming from the front hall. After a few minutes, I realized that my parents, Benjamin and Jaya, had moved to my father's study, adjacent to the kitchen. Their voices were lowered, but in the quiet house, their words carried through the thin wall. I heard my father say, "It is the perfect solution. Emma has all this extra space now." My hands froze, knife hovering over a cucumber. Extra space. They could not possibly know about my duplex. I had not told anyone in my family yet. My mother's voice chimed in. "She always helps family. That is how we raised her." Benjamin responded, "It will be such a relief, especially for the kids. They need stability right now." Then Jaya added, "I was thinking we could put the boys in one bedroom and Lunaria in the other. The living room in their side is bigger than ours, right?" Their side. My heart began to race as I pieced together what was happening. Somehow they knew about my duplex, and they had already made plans for Benjamin family to move in without even consulting me. I remained frozen in place, straining to hear more of their conversation. "Patrick, do you think she will want us to help her move her things to make room?" my mother asked. "No need," Lela Benjamin replied instead of my father. "She hardly has any furniture in that apartment of hers, always saving money instead of living a little." I heard Jaya laugh, followed by, "Well, I can help her decorate. I have so many ideas for making that place feel like a real home." My cheeks burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Not only had they discovered my purchase, but they had already decided that Benjamin family would be moving into the second unit without even consulting me. And from the sounds of it, they expected them to live there rent-free. I forced myself to continue chopping vegetables as my mind raced. How did they find out? Perhaps they had seen my name in property records, or maybe one of my parents' friends had mentioned me at the property and spotted me. Regardless of how they knew, their presumption was staggering. When we finally sat down for dinner, I waited for them to bring it up, curious to see how they would present this plan to me. After the food was served and we had exchanged the usual pleasantries, my father cleared his throat. "Emma," he began, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth, "we have some wonderful news. We have found the perfect solution to Benjamin's housing problem." I took a sip of water, avoiding eye contact with anyone at the table. My mother continued, "We know about your duplex, sweetheart. Mrs. Johnson from church saw you there last week and mentioned it to me. We are so proud of you for taking such a big step." Before I could respond, Benjamin jumped in. "And it is such perfect timing, sis. With our rent situation and the kids' school being so close to your new place, it just makes sense for us to take the other unit." Jaya nodded enthusiastically. "We promise to be the perfect neighbors. The kids are so excited about living close to their Aunt Emma." I felt all eyes on me, waiting for my excited agreement. The expectation in the room was palpable. Of course I would say yes. When had I ever said no to my family? Benjamin's children were watching me with hopeful expressions. Evren, the oldest, said, "Mom says we can walk to school from the new house, and you can help me with my math homework whenever I need it." I forced a smile, unable to disappoint the children in that moment. The adults at the table took my smile as agreement, and the conversation quickly turned to moving logistics. My mother started planning. "We can help you move your things next weekend, and then Benjamin and Jaya can start bringing their things over the following week." Benjamin added, "The timing is perfect since our lease is up at the end of the month, and without rent to pay, we can finally start getting ahead financially." The assumption that they would live there rent-free was now stated explicitly. Not a single person at the table seemed to think this was an extraordinary request. No one asked how this might affect my mortgage payments or my financial plans. No one considered that I might have my own plans for the property I had worked so hard to purchase. Instead of confronting them then and there, I stayed quiet, nodding occasionally and pushing food around my plate. A lifetime of being the family peacekeeper held me back from causing a scene. But inside, something had shifted. A boundary had been crossed that I could not ignore. The drive home that evening was a blur of conflicting emotions. Memories flooded back of all the times I had set aside my own needs to help my family, particularly Benjamin. The summer vacation I canceled to loan him money for car repairs, the weekends I spent babysitting so he and Jaya could have date nights, the countless times I had been expected to pick up the slack because I was single and supposedly had fewer responsibilities. As I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, I made a decision. This time would be different. This time, I would put myself first.
The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I had not felt in years. Sitting at my small kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I pulled out a notebook and began listing all the times my family had taken advantage of my generosity without reciprocation. The list grew quickly, filling the page with incidents dating back to my college years. There was the time I worked 2 jobs to pay my way through undergrad while my parents paid Benjamin full tuition, justifying it because he was not as academically inclined as I was and needed more support. There were the 3 separate occasions when Benjamin had borrowed money from me with vague promises to pay it back someday. The Christmas when my parents suggested I buy the expensive gaming console for all the kids, since I did not have children of my own to spend money on. The pattern was clear and long-standing. I had been conditioned to be the family safety net, the responsible one who would always sacrifice for others. But what struck me most was the complete lack of consideration for my own goals and dreams. Not once during the previous night's dinner had anyone asked what my plans were for the duplex. The assumption was that my property, my investment, was a family resource to be allocated according to their needs. I called my closest friend Taylor, who had helped me move some furniture into the duplex. When I explained the situation, her outrage on my behalf was validating. "Emma, that is absolutely ridiculous," she exclaimed. "You saved for years for this. It is your investment, your future. They cannot just decide to move in without even asking you, let alone expect to live there for free." "But they are family," I said, playing devil's advocate against my own interest out of habit. "And Benjamin does have the kids to think about." Taylor responded firmly. "Being family does not give them the right to take advantage of you. Would Benjamin do the same for you if the situations were reversed?" We both knew the answer to that question. Benjamin had never demonstrated the same level of sacrifice or consideration for me that was constantly expected in the other direction. "You need to set boundaries, Emma," Taylor continued. "If you let them move in now, especially rent-free, you will never get them out, and your investment will become a financial burden instead of the asset you worked so hard for." She was right, and deep down, I knew it. After our call, I made another decision. I would not confront my family directly yet, but I would move forward with my original plan for the duplex. In fact, I would accelerate it. That afternoon, I contacted 3 property management companies and scheduled consultations for the following day. By Tuesday evening, I had signed a contract with Cornerstone Property Management, a well-established firm with excellent reviews. The manager, Robert, assured me they could find qualified tenants quickly, especially given the desirable location of my duplex. I decided to rent out both units rather than live in one myself. This would maximize my rental income and create a clean break from the family expectations. I could find a small apartment closer to my office, reducing my commute time and creating more separation between my personal and family life. By Friday, Cornerstone had already lined up several potential tenants for viewings. I took a day off work to meet with Robert and compare both units for showing. We discussed rental rates, lease terms, and tenant requirements. Given the current market and location, he suggested a 12-month lease with rent slightly above what I had initially calculated, which would cover nearly 75% of my mortgage.
The following week was a whirlwind of activity. While dodging calls and texts from my family about moving plans, I was secretly meeting potential tenants, reviewing applications, and preparing lease agreements. I avoided Sunday dinner by claiming I had to work on an urgent client project, buying myself more time. By the end of that week, I had signed lease agreements with two separate tenants, both with excellent credit scores and stable employment. The unit initially intended for my own use would be occupied by a young professional couple, Michael and Lisa, who both worked at a nearby hospital. The second unit, ironically the one my family had mentally assigned to Benjamin and Jaya, would be rented by a retired professor, Dr. Eleanor Wilson, who wanted to downsize from her large home after her husband passed away. Both leases would begin on the 1st of the following month, just 2 weeks away. The timing was tight, but manageable. I arranged for professional cleaners to do a final pass through both units and schedule time for the property manager to do the move-in inspections with each tenant. Meanwhile, I found a small but modern one-bedroom apartment in a building just 3 blocks from my office. The rent was higher than I had hoped, but the convenience and proximity to work made it worthwhile. Plus, with the rental income from both duplex units, my overall housing expenses would still be lower than before. I signed a 6-month lease on the apartment and arranged for my furniture to be moved the following weekend. I told only Taylor and 2 other close friends about my new address, swearing them to secrecy. I would tell my family eventually, of course, but not until both duplex units were occupied, and it was too late for them to change my plans. The guilt was considerable, especially when Benjamin called to ask if I needed help packing up my apartment. I gave vague responses about not being ready yet and having everything under control. When my mother texted about coming over to measure for curtains in what would be Benjamin's side, I replied that I was still dealing with paperwork and would let them know when the time was right. As move-in day approached for my new tenants, the calls and texts from my family became more frequent and insistent. Jaya sent links to furniture she thought would look nice in my unit. My father called to discuss helping with moving costs for Benjamin. My mother left voicemails about organizing a housewarming party for us all. Each message increased my anxiety, but also strengthened my resolve. The pattern was clear now. My family making plans for my life, my resources, my future, without consulting me. Always assuming I would go along with whatever they decided was best, even when it primarily benefited Benjamin at my expense.
The weekend before the tenants were scheduled to move in, I successfully relocated to my new apartment. I changed my mailing address, updated my information with the bank and utility companies, and settled into my new, smaller space. It was cozy and convenient with a small balcony overlooking a courtyard and modern appliances that made the compact kitchen feel luxurious. As I unpacked my belongings, I felt a mixture of emotions. Guilt about the inevitable confrontation to come, anxiety about standing up to my family for perhaps the first time, but also a growing sense of pride and independence. I was taking control of my life and my financial future in a way that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The final piece of my plan fell into place when Robert, from the property management company, called to confirm that both sets of tenants would be moving in that Saturday. Everything was ready. All I had to do now was wait for the storm that would surely follow. The week leading up to move-in day was tense. My brother Benjamin texted me daily asking when they could start bringing boxes over to the duplex. "Hey sis, can we drop off some of the kids' stuff this weekend? Jaya has already packed up their rooms," he wrote on Monday. I replied several hours later. "Still finalizing some things with the property. We will let you know soon." On Tuesday, my mother called while I was at work. I let it go to voicemail and listened to her message during my lunch break. "Emma, sweetheart, I picked up some lovely curtains for your living room. They were on sale at Macy's. I thought we could hang them this weekend when we help you get settled. Call me back when you can." I texted a brief response. "Thanks, Mom, but I am still sorting things out. Might need to postpone a bit." By Wednesday, my father had joined the campaign. His text was more direct. "Benjamin needs to give notice to his landlord by Friday.
When can they start moving their things to your place? This required a more substantial response, so I called him after work, careful to keep my tone casual. Dad, I understand Benjamin is anxious to get moving, but there are still some repairs and paperwork I need to take care of before anyone can move in. He will have a better timeline next week. His frustration was evident. Emma, they need to make decisions now. Their landlord is already showing their apartment to new tenants. We cannot leave them without a place to live. I understand, Dad, I replied, keeping my voice steady, but I need to make sure everything is properly set up first. I will figure it out and let everyone know soon. Thursday brought an unexpected visit from Benjamin to my office. I was in a meeting with a client when the receptionist informed me my brother was waiting in the lobby. I excused myself briefly to speak with him. Benjamin looked agitated, running his hand through his hair as he paced the small reception area. When he saw me, he immediately launched into his concerns. Emma, we need to talk about move-in dates. Jaya is freaking out because we have to be out of our place by the end of the month, and you keep putting us off about when we can move into the duplex. I glanced around, aware of the receptionist pretending not to listen. This was not the place for this conversation. Benjamin, I am with the client right now, I said in a low voice, and this is not something we should discuss at my workplace. Well, you don't answer your phone or respond to texts with actual information, so what am I supposed to do? He replied, his voice rising slightly. I took a deep breath. I have things under control. There are some issues with the property that I am handling. You will have more information by the weekend, I promise. This seemed to placate him temporarily, though his expression remained doubtful. As he turned to leave, he added, Oh, and Jaya wanted to know if you have a preference on paint colors for the kids' rooms. She's thinking light blue for the boys and lavender for Lunaria. The assumption that they would be redecorating my property irritated me, but I maintained my composure. We will talk about all of that later, I said, already turning back toward my meeting room. That evening, I received an email from Jaya with the subject line, Duplex decorating ideas. Attached were Pinterest boards for each room of what she clearly considered their unit, along with links to furniture and decor items she planned to purchase. The email ended with, Let me know what you think. Also, do you mind if we paint the kitchen cabinets white? The current color is a bit dark for my taste. I closed the email without responding, my resolve strengthening with each presumptuous communication. Friday brought the most difficult interaction yet. My mother called just as I was leaving work. Emma, your father and I want to come over tomorrow morning to help you set up your place. Then we can get Benjamin's side ready too. They need to start moving in this weekend. The urgency in her voice made it clear they had reached the limit of their patience with my delays. I knew I couldn't put them off any longer without revealing my plan. Mom, I have some errands to run tomorrow morning, I said carefully. How about we talk about this on Sunday at dinner? There was a pause before she responded. Is everything okay, Emma? You've been so evasive lately. If there's a problem with the duplex, you know we can help. Your father's good with repairs, and I'm sure whatever is wrong can be fixed before Benjamin and his family move in. The concern in her voice was genuine, making what I was doing feel even more deceptive. But I reminded myself of the years of one-sided expectations and held firm. Everything is fine, Mom. I will explain everything on Sunday, I promise. After hanging up, I received a text from Benjamin. Parents said you're being weird about move-in dates. What's going on? We need to get out of our place ASAP. Landlord is being a jerk. This was followed by another. Also, Jaya wants to know if we can get the measurements for the bedrooms so we can make sure our furniture will fit. And then, almost forgot. Can you chip in for the moving truck? Kinda tight on cash right now, but should be able to pay you back next month. Each message reinforced the rightness of my decision. The entitlement was so ingrained that Benjamin couldn't even see it. He simply expected me to accommodate his needs, finance his move, and rearrange my life to solve his problems, all without question or complaint.
Saturday morning, the day my tenants were scheduled to move in. I woke early with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had arranged to meet Robert at the Duplex at 9 o'clock to oversee the move-in process and provide keys to both sets of tenants. Dr. Wilson would arrive at 9:30, and Michael and Lisa were scheduled for 11. I dressed carefully in professional attire, wanting to present myself as a competent property owner. As I was about to leave my new apartment, my phone rang. It was my father. "Emma," he said, without preamble. "Your mother and I are heading to the Duplex now. We thought we would surprise you and bring breakfast. Benjamin and Jaya are meeting us there with some boxes." My heart raced. They were going to arrive before me, before the tenants, before I had a chance to explain. The confrontation I had been dreading was about to happen in the worst possible way. "Actually, Dad, I am not at the Duplex," I managed to say. "I am on my way there now to meet someone." "Perfect. Well, see you there," he replied cheerfully, hanging up before I could protest further. I immediately called Robert to warn him about the situation. He assured me he would handle it professionally and wait for my arrival before proceeding with the tenant move-ins. The drive to the Duplex was the longest 20 minutes of my life. With each mile, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would explain my decision, and how I would stand firm in the face of what would surely be anger and disappointment from my family. As I turned onto the street, I could see my parents' car already parked in front of the Duplex. Benjamin's minivan was pulling up behind it. In my rearview mirror, I noticed a moving truck approaching from the opposite direction. Dr. Wilson was early. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. I parked my car behind Benjamin's minivan and took a deep breath. Through the windshield, I could see my family standing on the sidewalk in front of the Duplex, looking confused. Robert, in his Cornerstone Property Management polo shirt, was speaking with them, gesturing toward the property. As I exited my car, I heard my father saying, "There must be some mistake. This is my daughter's property. She bought it for our family." Robert noticed me approaching and gave me a subtle nod of acknowledgement. "Mrs. Harper," he said, using my last name formally. "Your family was just explaining that they thought they would be moving in today." I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Mom, Dad, Benjamin, Jaya," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to explain something to you." My mother looked bewildered, clutching a bag from the local bakery. "Emma, what is going on? Who is this man? And why is there a moving truck coming?" The moving truck had indeed arrived and now was parking across the street. Dr. Wilson, a dignified woman in her 60s, emerged from her car, parked further down the block, and approached our group with a curious expression. Benjamin, always quick to anger, stepped toward me. "What the hell, Emma? We were supposed to move in today. We gave notice at our apartment already." Before I could respond, Robert intervened smoothly. "Perhaps we should all step aside to allow Dr. Wilson to access her new home." He gestured toward the woman now standing at the edge of our group. "She has a scheduled move-in appointment, and her movers are waiting." "Her new home?" Jaya echoed, her voice rising. "What is he talking about, Emma?" All eyes turned to me. The moment I had been dreading and preparing for had arrived. I straightened my shoulders and spoke clearly. "I rented both units of the Duplex to tenants. Dr. Wilson is moving into Unit A today, and another couple is moving into Unit B later this morning." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother gasped, my father's face darkened with anger, and Benjamin stared at me in disbelief. Robert, sensing the tension, turned to Dr. Wilson. "Doctor, if you will allow me a few minutes to resolve this family matter, I will be right with you to complete your move-in process." She nodded understandingly and returned to her car to wait. "You did what?" my father finally asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I rented both units. I repeated, I signed year-long leases with qualified tenants through Cornerstone Property Management. Benjamin exploded. Are you kidding me? We have nowhere to live, Emma. We gave notice. Where are we supposed to go in 2 weeks? Jaya started to cry, turning away from the group and pulling out her phone, presumably to text someone about this development. My mother stepped forward and placed her hand on my arm. Sweetheart, there must be a misunderstanding. We discussed this. Benjamin and his family need that second unit. You know their situation. I gently removed her hand. No, Mom. You discussed it. You all made plans for my property without asking me. You assumed I would just go along with it like I always do. My father interjected, We thought you would want to help your brother. Family helps family, Emma. That is how we raised you. His words, meant to induce guilt, instead fueled my determination. Yes, family helps family, but it should go both ways. When has Benjamin ever made sacrifices for me? When have any of you considered what I might need or want before making decisions that affect my life?
Benjamin scoffed. Oh, here we go with the poor Emma routine. You have a good job, no kids, no real responsibilities. Some of us have actual problems. His dismissal of my life and choices was the final straw. 6 years of saving, of denying myself luxuries and vacations, of working overtime and weekends to reach my goal of property ownership, all reduced to having no real responsibilities. Real responsibilities, I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Like financial responsibility? Because from where I am standing, you have never shown any. You have borrowed money from me 3 times without repaying it. Mom and Dad have bailed you out countless times, and now you expected to live in my investment property rent-free with no regard for how that would affect my mortgage payments or financial future? By now, Michael and Lisa had arrived for their move-in appointment and were watching our family drama unfold from their car. Robert discreetly went to speak with them, explaining the delay. My mother began to cry, and my father put his arm around her shoulders. I never thought you would be so selfish, Emma, he said, disappointment evident in his tone. Your brother has children to think about. I am not being selfish, I replied firmly. I am being realistic. This duplex is an investment that I worked hard for. I have a mortgage to pay. If Benjamin and his family lived there rent-free, I would be the one covering the entire cost. How is that fair? Jaya rejoined the conversation, her expression hard. We would have helped with utilities at least, and Benjamin is looking for work. Once he finds something, we could have contributed. I shook my head. That is not enough, and based on past experience, I do not believe it would have happened anyway. How long before 1 month turned into 6 and 6 into a year? How long before my investment became a financial burden instead of an asset? Benjamin turned to our parents. Can you believe this? After everything we have done for her? That statement stunned me into momentary silence. Everything they had done for me? My mind raced through years of being expected to babysit at a moment's notice, to loan money I never got back, to rearrange my schedule to accommodate Benjamin's needs. What exactly have you done for me, Benjamin? I asked quietly. Name one time you have put my needs before your own. One time you have sacrificed anything for me. He faltered, unable to come up with an example. My father stepped in. That is enough, Emma. I do not know what has gotten into you, but this is not how we raised you to behave. Family comes first. Yes, family comes first, I agreed, but I am family too, and for years I have been expected to put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Not anymore. So what are we supposed to do now? Benjamin demanded. Where are we supposed to live? The same place you would live if I had not bought this duplex, I replied. Find an apartment you can afford, budget your money, do what every other family has to do. Jaya scoffed.
easy for you to say from your position of privilege." Her comment ignited a fresh wave of anger. Privilege? I worked 60-hour weeks for years to save for this property. I packed lunches instead of eating out. I lived in a tiny apartment and drove an old car. I earned this through hard work and careful planning, not privilege. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried another approach. "Emma, sweetheart, maybe we can compromise. Perhaps Benjamin could pay some rent, even if it is below market rate." I shook my head. "It is too late for that, Mom. I have signed binding leases with both tenants. They have legal rights to occupy those units for the next 12 months. "You could break the leases," my father suggested, "pay whatever penalty there is." The fact that he would suggest I take a financial hit to fix Benjamin's problem perfectly illustrated the dynamic I was fighting against. "No," I said firmly, "I will not break legal contracts and risk my professional reputation because Benjamin failed to plan properly. These tenants have rights, and I intend to honor my agreements with them." Benjamin threw up his hands in disgust. Unbelievable. So much for family loyalty. My mother was openly crying now. "I do not understand why you didn't just tell us your plans, Emma. Why keep it a secret if you were not doing anything wrong?" Her question hit me hard. It was a fair point. Why hadn't I simply told them up front? "Because you never would have listened," I replied honestly. "You would have pressured me to change my mind, made me feel guilty, and probably would have worn me down eventually. You didn't even ask me before making plans for my property. You just assumed I would go along with what you wanted, like I always do." Robert approached cautiously. "Mrs. Harper, Dr. Wilson is ready to begin her move-in process, and Michael and Lisa are waiting as well." I nodded to him, grateful for the interruption. "I need to attend to my tenants now," I told my family. "We can continue this discussion later if you want, but my decision is final." My father's face was a mask of disappointment as he took my mother's arm. "Let's go, Ella. Clearly, Emma has made her choice." Benjamin remained defiant. "This is not over, Emma. You can't just leave us homeless." "You are not homeless, Benjamin," I said, exhaustion creeping into my voice. "You have 2 weeks to find a new place. Plenty of families manage it every day." Jaya grabbed his arm. "Come on, Benjamin. She obviously doesn't care about us or the children. Let's go." As they turned to leave, my mother looked back at me with tears in her eyes. "I don't recognize you anymore, Emma. This is not the daughter I raised." Her words stung, but I stood my ground as they all got into their vehicles and drove away. Only when they were out of sight did I allow my shoulders to slump and the tears to well in my eyes. Robert approached and handed me a tissue. "That was tough," he said kindly, "but for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." I wiped my eyes and straightened my posture. "Thank you. Now let's get Dr. Wilson moved into her new home." As we walked toward the duplex where Dr. Wilson was waiting patiently, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The confrontation had been every bit as painful as I had feared, but standing my ground had been necessary. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had put my needs first. The silence from my family was deafening in the days following the confrontation. My mother daily texts ceased, my father weekend calls to check in vanished. Even Benjamin, who usually contacted me whenever he needed something, maintained radio silence. It was as if I had been excommunicated from the family for my act of self-preservation. The first week was the hardest. I would pick up my phone to call my mother, then set it down again, reminding myself that I had done nothing wrong. I had simply protected my investment and set a boundary that was long overdue. Still, 32 years of conditioning was difficult to overcome. The guilt weighed heavily, especially at night when I lay awake in my new apartment, wondering if I had been too harsh, too sudden in my approach. Taylor proved to be an invaluable support during this time. She came over with takeout and wine 3 days after the confrontation, letting me vent my complicated emotions. I keep second-guessing myself, I admitted, curled up on my new couch. Maybe I should have just let them have the duplex. Maybe I am being selfish. Taylor looked at me incredulously. Emma, do you hear yourself? You worked for 6 years to save for that property. 6 years. And they expected to live there for free without even discussing it with you? How is protecting your investment selfish? But they are family, I said weakly, the argument sounding hollow even to my own ears. Yes, and families should support each other mutually, not just take and take and take, she replied firmly. When was the last time Benjamin sacrificed anything for you? I could not think of a single example. Exactly, Taylor continued. This is a pattern that needed to be broken. And honestly, you did Benjamin a favor in the long run. He needs to learn financial responsibility, not get another bailout. Deep down, I knew she was right. My brother had never faced the consequences of his financial decisions because someone had always been there to rescue him, usually me or our parents. By refusing to be his safety net this time, I was forcing him to find his own solutions. The second week brought practical concerns that distracted me from the family drama. Both sets of tenants had settled in, and Robert from the property management company sent me detailed reports of the move and inspections. There were minor maintenance issues to address, a leaky faucet in Unit A, a sticky door in Unit B. Dealing with these small problems gave me a sense of accomplishment and reinforced that I was capable of handling this property investment. The first rental checks arrived in my account, providing tangible validation of my decision. Seeing those deposits, knowing they would cover the majority of my mortgage payment, brought a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what I had worked toward all those years of saving and sacrificing. By the third week, the silence from my family became concerning rather than hurtful. I wondered how Benjamin and Jaya were managing with their housing situation, whether they had found a new place before their lease expired. Despite our disagreement, I did care about them, and especially about my niece and nephews. I finally broke down and texted my mother, just checking in, hope everyone is well. Her response came hours later, brief and formal. We are fine. Benjamin and Jaya found an apartment, smaller than they wanted, but affordable. The terseness of her message stung, but I was relieved to hear they had found housing. I responded, I am glad to hear that. I miss you. She did not reply. A month after the confrontation, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. The sight of her familiar handwriting on the envelope brought tears to my eyes before I even opened it. Inside was a 4-page letter, the first real communication since that day at the duplex. My dearest Emma, she began, it has taken me some time to process what happened and to try to understand your perspective. I want you to know that while I was hurt and disappointed by your decision, I have been reflecting on our family dynamics and my role in creating the situation. She went on to acknowledge that the family had often taken my generosity for granted and had developed expectations that were not fair to me. She admitted that Benjamin had been allowed to rely too heavily on family support without developing his own responsibility. Your father and I had good intentions, she wrote. We wanted to help Benjamin through a difficult time, but we should have asked you first, not assumed you would go along with our plan. That was wrong of us, and I am sorry. Her apology brought fresh tears. It was more than I had expected and exactly what I needed to hear. She continued, Benjamin and Jaya have found a 2-bedroom apartment across town. It is not ideal, but it is within their budget. The children are sharing a room, which has been an adjustment, but they are resilient.
Benjamin has found part-time work at a warehouse while he continues to look for something in his field. Jaya has picked up more hours teaching. They are managing, which I suppose is the important thing. The letter ended with a cautious olive branch. We would love to see you at Sunday dinner this week if you are willing. I cannot promise there will not be tension, but I can promise that your father and I will make an effort to respect your boundaries. Benjamin may need more time. Love always, Mom. I held the letter to my chest, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. It was not a complete resolution, but it was a start. The acknowledgement of my perspective and the apology for their presumption meant more than I could express. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with a mixture of anxiety and hope. When my mother opened the door, there was a moment of awkward hesitation before she pulled me into a tight hug. "I have missed you," she whispered. "I have missed you too, Mom," I replied, fighting back tears. Dinner was subdued compared to our usual family gatherings. Benjamin, Jaya, and the children were not present, which was probably for the best. My father was reserved at first, but as the meal progressed, he began to thaw. By dessert, we were having something resembling a normal conversation. Before I left, my father took me aside. "It was wrong of us to make plans for your property without consulting you," he admitted gruffly. "You worked hard for that duplex. It is yours to do with as you choose." Coming from my father, this acknowledgement was significant. He had never been one to admit mistakes easily. "Thank you, Dad," I said, giving him a hug. "That means a lot to me." The road to complete reconciliation was longer with Benjamin and Jaya. They declined the next several family dinners when they knew I would be present. When we finally did see each other at my nephew's birthday party 2 months later, the tension was palpable. Benjamin was coolly polite. Jaya barely acknowledged me, but at least they were civil. The children, thankfully, were unchanged in their affection for their aunt. Lunaria threw her arms around me when I arrived, and Everin eagerly showed me his science project. Even little Silas wanted to sit on my lap during cake, a normalcy that helped ease the strained atmosphere. As months passed, family dynamics slowly shifted. My parents began to treat me with the new respect, consulting me about decisions rather than informing me after the fact. They stopped automatically volunteering my time and resources for family needs. It was a subtle but profound change that validated my decision to stand up for myself. Benjamin and Jaya remained distant, but there were small signs of progress. Benjamin sent me a text when he secured a full-time position at a local company, a small olive branch that I gratefully acknowledged with congratulations. Jaya included me in a group text about school fundraisers, a minor inclusion that nonetheless indicated a thawing of relations. Most surprisingly, my brother seemed to be developing a sense of financial responsibility that had previously been absent. According to my mother, he and Jaya had created a budget and were sticking to it. They had even started a small savings account, a first in their married life. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself both anticipating and dreading the holiday. It would be the first major family gathering since the Duplex incident, as I had come to think of it. When my mother called to confirm I would be attending, she mentioned casually that Benjamin and Jaya would be there with the kids. "They are doing better now," she added. "Benjamin especially. I think this whole experience has been a wake-up call for him." When the day arrived, I brought a bottle of wine and my signature pumpkin pie, armor of sorts, for the potentially uncomfortable reunion. To my surprise, Benjamin greeted me at the door, offering a tentative smile. "Hey, Emma," he said. "Good to see you." "Good to see you too," I replied, meaning it despite my nervousness. The day was not without its awkward moments, but overall it was more pleasant than I had dared to hope. During a quiet moment in the kitchen, Benjamin approached me as I was refilling my water glass. "I want to apologize," he said, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "What we tried to do with your duplex was not right. We should not have expected you to house us for free." His apology, though belated, was sincere. I could see it cost him something to admit he was wrong. "Thank you, Benjamin," I said. "That means a lot to me." He nodded, then added, "The apartment we found turned out to be okay. It is teaching us to live within our means," which I guess was overdue. It was perhaps the most self-aware statement I had ever heard from my brother. I smiled. "I'm glad things are working out. And I started a savings account," he continued, a hint of pride in his voice. "Not much in it yet, but it is a start." "That's great, Benjamin," I said warmly. "Really great." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The confrontation at the duplex had been painful and disruptive, but it had also been necessary. By standing up for myself, I had not only protected my financial investment, but had also catalyzed important changes in my family dynamics. My relationship with my parents was stronger and more balanced than before. Benjamin was taking steps toward financial responsibility, and I had grown in confidence and self-respect, learning that setting boundaries, while difficult, was essential for healthy relationships. The duplex itself was proving to be an excellent investment. Both tenants were reliable and respectful of the property. The rental income covered most of my mortgage, allowing me to build equity while also saving for future investments. Dr. Wilson had even sent me a holiday card, thanking me for providing such a lovely home for her new chapter in life. As I unlocked the door to my apartment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path had not been easy, but it had led to growth for all of us. And perhaps most importantly, I had learned to value my own needs and goals as much as I valued those of my family.
6 months after the confrontation at the duplex, my life had settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. My one-bedroom apartment near my office had become a true home, decorated with intention rather than leftovers and hand-me-downs. The shorter commute gave me an extra hour each day, which I used for morning yoga and reading. Small luxuries I had denied myself during my years of aggressive saving. The property management company sent monthly reports on the duplex, along with the rental deposits that reliably appeared in my account. Both tenants had renewed their leases for a second year, a validation of both my investment choice and my property management decisions. Dr. Wilson had planted flowers in the small garden behind her unit, while Michael and Lisa had repainted their living room with my permission, improvements that only enhanced the property value. My relationship with my parents had evolved into something more balanced and mature. The weekly Sunday dinners resumed, but with a difference. I was now treated as an equal adult, with valid perspectives and boundaries, not just as the reliable daughter who would always accommodate others' needs. My father had even asked my advice about his retirement investments, a significant shift in how he viewed my financial acumen. The most surprising change, however, was in my relationship with Benjamin. Our childhood roles had been so firmly established. He was the charming, needy one who required support, and I was the responsible, capable one who provided it. The duplex incident had shattered that dynamic, forcing us to establish a new way of relating to each other. Benjamin had maintained the full-time job he found after the confrontation, showing a commitment to stability that had previously been lacking. He and Jaya had downsized their lifestyle to match their income, a concept that seemed to be finally taking root. Most significantly, Benjamin had started repaying the money he had borrowed from me over the years, sending small but regular payments each month without prompting. On a warm Saturday in June, exactly 1 year after the confrontation at the duplex, Benjamin invited me to meet him for coffee. It was an unusual request. We typically only saw each other at family gatherings. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed. The coffee shop was busy with weekend customers, but Benjamin had secured a quiet table in the corner. He looked different somehow, more settled in himself. He had traded his usual graphic t-shirts for a simple button-down, and his perpetually disheveled hair was neatly trimmed. "Thanks for meeting me,"
he said as I sat down with my latte. "I wanted to talk to you without the whole family around." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. He took a deep breath. "This past year has been enlightening. When you refused to let us move into your duplex, I was furious. I thought you were being selfish and cruel, especially knowing our situation with the kids." He paused, collecting his thoughts. But looking back, it was the wake-up call I needed. Jaya and I had been living beyond our means for years, always expecting someone, usually you or mom and dad, to bail us out when things got tough. His self-awareness caught me by surprise. It must have shown on my face because he smiled ruefully. "I know, shocking that I can admit it, right?" he said. "But it is true. We never had to face the consequences of our choices because there was always a safety net. When you removed that net, we had to figure things out on our own for once." "I appreciate you saying that, Benjamin," I replied carefully. "It was not an easy decision for me." He nodded. "I get that now, and I want you to know that things are actually better for us. The apartment is not as nice as your duplex would have been, but it is ours, and we pay for it ourselves. The kids are doing fine with sharing rooms, and Jaya and I finally had to sit down and make a real budget, something we should have done years ago." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table to me. I opened it to find a check for $1,000, a substantial portion of what he still owed me. "It is not everything," he acknowledged, "but it is a start. I plan to pay back every cent." The check represented more than money. It was tangible evidence of his growth and our changing relationship. I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you," I said simply. "No, thank you," he replied, surprising me again, "for not enabling me anymore, for forcing me to grow up, even though I fought it every step of the way." We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon, having perhaps the most honest conversation of our adult lives. Benjamin shared his struggles with financial responsibility, admitting that he had always envied my discipline while simultaneously resenting it. I confessed my frustration at being taken for granted and my guilt at finally standing up for myself. By the time we parted, something fundamental had shifted between us. We were no longer locked in the roles of responsible sister and irresponsible brother. We were simply two adults with different strengths and weaknesses, finding a new way to be family, without the unhealthy patterns of the past. The lessons I learned through the duplex experience extended beyond family dynamics. I had discovered a confidence in my financial decisions that translated to other areas of my life. At work, I began speaking up more in meetings and taking on leadership roles in projects. I negotiated a promotion and salary increase, advocating for myself with an assurance I had previously reserved for advocating for others. I also began exploring additional investment opportunities, researching potential properties for a second real estate purchase. The success of the duplex had given me both the financial means and the confidence to expand my portfolio. I consulted with financial advisors and real estate professionals, approaching each potential investment with careful analysis rather than emotional decision-making. The holiday season brought another milestone. For the first time, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. It was a tight fit, but everyone made it work, including Benjamin, Jaya, and the children. My mother brought her traditional stuffing, and my father carved the turkey I had nervously prepared following her recipe. As we gathered around my table, I looked at the faces of my family and felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been difficult, but we had emerged stronger, with healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and expectation. Benjamin raised his glass in a toast. "To Emma," he said, "for teaching us all that true family support means helping each other grow, not enabling bad habits, and for making one hell of a turkey for her first Thanksgiving." Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. My mother reached over to squeeze my hand, her eyes communicating what words could not. pride, love, and a deep appreciation for the woman I had become. The duplex that had caused so much conflict had ultimately been the catalyst for positive change in all our lives. By standing firm in my decision, I had not only secured my financial future, but had also helped my family evolve into healthier versions of themselves. The short-term pain had led to long-term growth that none of us could have anticipated. As I reflect on this journey, the lesson that resonates most deeply is this: setting boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for healthy relationships. By finally valuing my own needs and goals as much as those of my family, I created space for all of us to grow. The old saying that you cannot pour from an empty cup proved profoundly true. By taking care of my own financial and emotional well-being, I became more, not less, able to support my family in meaningful ways. The duplex stands as a physical reminder of this transformation. What began as a simple investment property became the turning point in our family story, the moment when old patterns were broken and new, healthier ones began to form. And for that unexpected gift, I am eternally grateful. 2 years after the initial confrontation, I purchased a second property, a small apartment building with 4 units. Benjamin was among the first to congratulate me, expressing genuine pride in my success rather than resentment or entitlement. Jaya had returned to school to complete her teaching certification, and they had saved enough for a down payment on their own small house. My parents had become my biggest cheerleaders, bragging to their friends about their daughter real estate investments. The Sunday dinners continued, but now included discussions of my business ventures alongside updates on the grandchildren's activities. I was no longer just the family's safety net, but a successful businesswoman whose opinions and expertise were valued and respected. The children, Everin, Lunaria, and Silas, had adapted well to their smaller living space and had learned valuable lessons about budgeting and financial responsibility from watching their parents navigate their new reality. They visited my apartment regularly, and I enjoyed being an aunt who could offer guidance and support without being expected to solve every problem. Dr. Wilson became more than just a tenant. She became a friend and mentor, sharing stories of her late husband's career as a professor and offering wisdom about independence and self-determination. Michael and Lisa, my other tenants, eventually purchased their own home, but we maintained a friendly relationship. Their replacement tenants were equally reliable, confirming my instinct that careful screening and professional property management were worthwhile investments. The financial success of my real estate ventures allowed me to achieve goals I had only dreamed of. I established an emergency fund that gave me peace of mind, contributed more aggressively to my retirement accounts, and even took a vacation to Europe, something I had denied myself for years in pursuit of my property ownership dreams. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own judgment and to prioritize my well-being without guilt or apology. The woman who once reflexively said yes to every family request had evolved into someone who could assess situations objectively and make decisions based on her own values and goals rather than others' expectations. The duplex investment had taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is to refuse to enable their poor choices. By forcing Benjamin to take responsibility for his financial decisions, I had ultimately helped him develop skills and confidence he might never have gained otherwise. Our relationship was stronger now, built on mutual respect rather than dependency and resentment. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Remember, Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and others is to say no when necessary. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage and clarity in your own journey of setting healthy boundaries.